Welcome, everyone, to our Barriers for Breakfast series, where we talk with fellow innovators and colleagues across the nation and really try to get to the heart of people that are out there solving problems and addressing challenges in the education space. And today's a particular thrill for me, as you can see by my background. I don't normally appear at East Carolina University virtually, but I do appear there frequently. And I've had the in person. And I've had the pleasure over the past few years of getting to know our guest today, Dr. Elizabeth Hodge, and have worked with her in a variety of capacities at ECU, from professional advisory boards, on business councils for education, certainly in strategic leadership retreats, and really talking about education next. And at the heart of that is kind of the unique roles that she plays at the university in innovation, teacher preparation, rural economic partnerships, and a host of things that she is involved in. So Elizabeth, welcome. And I wanted to give you just a chance to talk about your background and role a little bit, and roles plural, as we get into the live cast today, and really focus on what universities can do in this next normal to cultivate partnerships and sort of reciprocal agreements. We'll get to all that, but we'd just love for our listeners to get an introduction to you first.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me this morning. Good morning, everyone. So Elizabeth Hodge, I have several different roles over the past 26 years in my academic career. Most recently, certainly at the university, I'm a full professor, and of course that focuses on teaching, research, and service. In addition to that, I also serve as the Assistant Dean for Innovation and Strategic Initiatives in the College of Education. And that is certainly where you and I have met quite frequently in many of the meetings and council and strategy sessions that we've had over time. And then in addition to that, I also serve as the Director of Engaged Research in the Office of Community Engagement and Research at the university. And that's where a lot of my role focuses on community partnerships. I can go on and on about the different roles. I also serve as a coordinator for an innovation living learning community, and also the lead administrator for the North Carolina New Teacher Support Program. So I have several layers to the work that I do, but I think the benefit of that is the ability to meet so many individuals in the community and to think about how we partner and collaborate to build a better future.
Thank you for that. And I'm here today with Dr. Elizabeth Hodge on our Barriers for Breakfast podcast. We share this, of course, across YouTube, LinkedIn, various social media channels, and hope that people listening, as they're walking around sort of contemplating the future of economic development and the connection to education, that they learn a lot today about how regional universities and partnerships can really make that happen. So Elizabeth, you know that I'm an alum and have fond feelings about the university and sort of the epicenter that it sits in for the eastern part of North Carolina. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about why the university is so important to partnerships in that region, why it's important for educators to take advantage of all the offerings that you have, both at the teacher level, principal level, and what that can really do for rural economies. So I just love to hear kind of your personal why you're in this work to support educators and leaders as they go out and further these outcomes for young people and communities in Eastern North Carolina.
Certainly. So as I mentioned, I've been in academia for 26 years now, and my purpose or my why has always been about making a difference for those that I serve. And so whether it's the students or the faculty that I'm supporting, or the community partners or industry partners that we're working with, it's about understanding the context in which, in the environment that they're in. And I think ECU is really poised to do an excellent job of that, because we sit where we're situated. We can actually serve the rural community and emphasize and look into the needs that they have. So our students come from various backgrounds. This currently today, there's a large focus on equity, diversity, and access. And I think that is unique to our institution in the sense that we provide a great deal of access through the partnerships that we develop within the different communities. And so that's I guess one piece of it.
No, super helpful. And you mentioned a few examples of students and people that you're serving. I'm curious what community partnerships look like specifically across your desk, the things that you're involved in now. How is that happening in Greenville? How is that happening sort of with rural education networks? What work is ECU really featuring to really raise the profile of Eastern North Carolina and the educators in it?
So there's a lot of different initiatives that I'm fortunate to be involved with. I'll start with the first one, of course, the Latham Clinical Schools Network. Being from the College of Education, we have a partnership with the school districts and within our communities that we work with. And this has been truly powerful in the sense of helping to support our in-service, pre-service teachers, then move into the in-service and teaching communities. And so that partnership has been established for many years in the College of Education, and certainly mutually beneficial for both the university as well as the school districts. Other initiatives in terms of economic development, we have, as I mentioned, I'm the coordinator for the Innovation Living Learning Community. And this is an initiative that began just 4 years ago, where really to promote student success and achievement, but also geared towards innovation and entrepreneurship. And so we partnered with the Miller School of Entrepreneurship to develop out a 4-year program for students to come on campus as freshmen and work through different programming. So students that are involved in this initiative will participate not only in the traditional academic success programs, but also receive additional training and receive an entrepreneurship certificate. Be involved in the e-passport program, where we have different speakers from the community and industry come in and share their experiences with students and even some of their failures and pitfalls, and so that we can assist them in working through some of these challenges that they face in their business or within their community. Throughout the program, in addition, they participate in the Pirate Entrepreneurship Challenge. And this is again, this is an entrepreneurial challenge for students to develop either a product or a service. It offers students and friends of the university the opportunity to win over 100,000 in cash and prizes. And so oftentimes, in addition to some of those prizes that they're getting, they're also working with mentors along the way. And I think that's really the benefit of the Pirate Entrepreneurship Challenge, is that they're actually working within the community and actually understanding some of the challenges that the small businesses face in rural Eastern North Carolina. So that's just one of the initiatives. In addition to that, I'm also a faculty fellow in the Honors College, and I have the opportunity to teach. Oh goodness, I think this year it's over 300 students that are coming into the university, and these students are taught human-centered design thinking, and they use the business model and mission model canvas to solve wicked problems.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So when we think about how ECU got into that space and how other regional universities can sort of encourage both entrepreneurship, education, learning, and training around these initiatives, it obviously hasn't been like that your whole career. What was the pivot? What was the recency? When did you see things sort of changing, and how did you all go about designing that future?
So I think there's a few different elements. So certainly, I think part of it has been through the Office of Community Engagement and Research. There's been this ongoing partnerships that have been formed over the past several years. As these partnerships continue, you develop those relationships. Initially, many times you see researchers go out into the community and they conduct their research and then they leave and they, write their papers, and then that's it. What we've really focused on is that reciprocity, where we're working with community members, and as we develop those relationships, I think that's how this innovation mindset has grown, because it's part of a catalyst for new ideas and solutions to come about. And the relationships that have been developed over the years have allowed us to have a seat at the table where maybe in the past it wasn't the case.
I'm going to detail 3 futures for you for Eastern North Carolina. And I just love for you to comment on them, because they've been a part of our work together in terms of strategies for the College of Ed and how we're envisioning these futures a little bit. We'd just love to, get your take on my processing of the work this summer. One future is that rural communities and parts of Eastern North Carolina that mimic rural America, that digital infrastructure is a key, that if we get broadband access out to those communities, that we will be able to bring products and service commerce right to the doorstep of the places they love to live, and that people who have not had access or maybe even transportation to ECU can get an education online. They can workshop in various entrepreneurship programs like virtual accelerators, and that infrastructure alone would be a great leveler. Like it's a type of 21st century right, if you will, that we all need to be ensuring that people have access to. And I think that's definitely more and more what we're seeing out of the current national administration and the North Carolina initiatives, whether it be NC-REN or whether it, look at connecting the state through cloud infrastructure, that schools have played such an important part in that, whether it's a university, community college, high school. Getting opportunities out to rural America through digital broadband, really important. I think if that proliferates, there's an assumption that everybody will take on digital jobs, and that digital jobs would be the currency, and you could still live wherever you wanted to live. So that future is uncertain, but it's one that we could see. A second would be, what are the jobs to be done in these communities, right? You and I talked before about unfortunately, there will be more natural disasters on the coast of North Carolina, and we see a lot of environmental protection work. We see a lot of, jobs in security and food restoration, or, power restoration. And often those jobs have to go across the Southeast, and people have to come in to do them. And so, how do we engage the rural economies in some of these place-based jobs that may be new and different for small communities? And how telemedicine, how are we going to work with regional hospitals and set up clinics that can work together? In that second future, the school system is paramount, because in rural economies it's often the largest employer. And so I know ECU looks at that and thinks about, where are those teachers coming from, where are those principals coming from, and how can we set them up for success to educate and grow those rural economies in that catalyst feature. So there's a place-based future, right? That's kind of mixed with technology, but we've also got a center around. And then I think the scary sort of apocalyptic one is that those jobs aren't going there. And how do we elevate and engage people to move to different parts of the rural ecosystem, whether it be the tourism industry on the coast, or whether it be, a new sort of bioagriculture capability that's, taking advantage of the farmland and the new technologies, and how they can go back into those communities and do new business remotely, or, ensure that those communities have a future. And I say apocalyptic because I don't know that one. I think we're at a really interesting point where the more we digitize in future one, or the more we automate, there's a possibility to cluster around cities versus rural economies. And the second one it's kind of a both and, right? There's hybrid roles that we can fulfill and play as a university leader. And then in the third one, I'm concerned about, one of the divides in our country is that we often look at things as rural or urban, and certain assumptions are made. And here's ECU, I think, sitting at the nexus of all three. There's problems and challenges in all three for a regional university. What are you seeing out there? How do you feel about those futures? Which parts of it, resonate? Which parts of it might you challenge?
So I want to jump into the apocalyptic one and just dive right into
Right.
future three and share one of the programs that we have at ECU is called Rise 29. And Rise 29 combines a partnership with some of our rural communities and counties in the area. And what that does is it allows us to partner our students with small businesses in these communities to do needs assessment, to analyze the current workflows and needs and of that community or of that particular business, and then develop out plans to assist them in moving that forward. And so to me, the apocalyptic, if I can say it correctly, is actually already being addressed by many of the initiatives that we have. Rise 29 is just one of them. We also have an I-Corps program through the National Science Foundation that also allows for faculty, students, friends of ECU, business owners, basically anyone who's interested in participating to go through the program. And again, that allows individuals to come in and who might not have that business mindset or knows, just a particular aspect, but doesn't really know how to grow it and have it flourish, to receive mentoring and different resources to help them build their capacity. And when I say capacity, I also think that goes to future 1 and 2. So part of what ECU, I think, does so well is building the capacity, not only within the students that we're preparing, but also through those partnerships. So we have the opportunity to teach and train our students to go, either many of them would be returning to the communities that they grew up in, but also then to have them have that curious mindset of what are some of the possibilities and what are the things that we're struggling with, whether it's another hurricane that we're having to deal with, and how do we prepare our teachers in the field to respond to that? Or how do we have student groups go out and work with communities to think through what's needed in preparation for those potential hazards?
So I hear in your responses, the education side of that work and also the economic side. There's sort of a tie-in to helping those small businesses that's really interesting. We're educating students at ECU on the skills and tactics of a modern business or a mission-driven business. And here these students go back out to help the small businesses and grow their capacity and help them thrive. So can you distinguish for me which efforts and initiatives are kind of education-focused community partnerships and which ones blend that edu-business, edu-innovation intersection? Because it sounds like you're doing all of it. And I love that, as you know, because I think we have a false dichotomy in our field that, education is always good and business is always bad, or great education actors are great and great business actors are great, but there's, no in between. And the reality is that, education and economic development are linked, and that the more we educate and modernize and equip people with the knowledge, skills, and dispositions to thrive, where do they learn that? They learn that at a university. They begin to learn that through credentials or certificates, and then they go back out and make an economic impact. So how are you distinguishing with your colleagues, the externals, the people that are saying, well, Elizabeth is the innovation or business person. She's not an educator. How do you make sure they understand you're both of that?
Right. So funny is I am an educator, so I get the benefit of being both. But I think, it's hard to pinpoint just one, whether it's one moment in time or one council. But at the university, we have our strategic plan, and part of our strategic plan is a regional transformation council. And, I've really seen that group think through what different, whether it's seed grant opportunities for faculty, whether it's special initiatives that are available to community members, whether it's specific academic programming. So I think of the Miller School of Entrepreneurship. The great thing about the Miller School, it is a small unit, but their motto, and I can see Mike Harris as I'm speaking, it's a we, it's not an I. And so many times when he engages, he talks about entrepreneurship is for everyone, every field. It's just not, it's standalone. And so I think part of how we have grown this mindset is through that unit's willingness to engage with other academic units on campus. In addition to that, I also think it has to do with setting those strategic priorities and developing out the different councils to work towards those initiatives. So I mentioned the Rise 29, which is part of the rural education grant. We also have the Innovation LLC that came out of that. In addition to that, the Honors College focus on human-centered design, because it's a large number of students and an interdisciplinary team that teaches those students. It then spreads through the different academic units in building awareness on how to cultivate both the education component, but then also the economic development component. And the focus on engaging with the communities to empathize and listen to the problems that they have, and then almost matchmaking with our different programs to determine which one will suit their needs best. So for example, another initiative that we have is the Engagement and Outreach Scholar Academy. And this academy has faculty working with business and community partners to solve some of the challenges. The way it works is that faculty propose their research initiatives, but then work with the community members to really ensure that we're meeting their needs and that they're engaged. It's a participatory based project as opposed to your traditional research initiatives. And through that, we've been able to develop a lot of partnerships that I think have allowed us to build out this capacity amongst not only our faculty, but also our students participate in the Student Engagement and Outreach Academy. And I'm not sure if I fully answered your question, so you may.
You did, and I want to go a little bit further into it. We're here on our Berries for Breakfast vidcast with Dr. Elizabeth Hodge at East Carolina University, talking about a range of issues, from the role of universities in economic and educational partnerships, also how we develop reciprocity with individuals, teams, organizations. One of the things that you said in that last thread that I want to, go further with you on is the entrepreneurial mindset. Language matters, and it's so challenging for people when they hear entrepreneur. They connote all these images of high risk and eating cheese sandwiches out of the garage, and as much failure as much success. And I know you and I share the common mind around what we're really talking about is entrepreneurial tendencies, skill sets, mindsets. That is something that the workforce right now and particularly I think educators have lacked. They tend to be good students, follow task behavior, do what's asked, do what's expected, expect their boss to deliver clear, non-volatile conditions. And then if you'll just tell me what to do, I will go and do it. But that's not the world we're in, nor the world we're headed to. So when you started to make these changes and you started to work with students who were coming from a task mindset or an organizational mindset, when you work with teachers or professors who come with that mindset, any tips or tools that you've seen where, people begin to slowly get it? They get to understand that they have to show initiative, that they have to design futures, even if it's failing forward, even if it's something that might not stick. It's an opportunity to go to the next place. Like, talk to the listeners a little bit around what you've seen be effective in those environments, and what listeners need to think about as they kind of carve out or design their own future.
Certainly. Well, you're definitely speaking my language in terms of failing forward. So I think the first thing is building that curiosity, and the way I've seen that the way that it's working is by taking the business terms and really putting more of a skill set mindset aspect towards it. Because when I talk about the business model canvas, the fear arises in many, right? The pushback of, well, I'm not in business, so that's not what I do. I hear it from faculty and I hear it from students all the time.
Right.
And what we're trying to do is move past that and build and have them understand the process. So the way that I've seen it be, and we really amongst the team have seen it be successful, is through human-centered design. And the model for human-centered design is to empathize and listen and do customer discovery, to define what the actual problem is through those listening opportunities, and then to ideate, brainstorm, and that's the fun one, right? So everyone can kind of get excited around generating ideas and being curious about what possibilities there are, and then testing those. And it becomes this cycle, right? So you develop it, you prototype it, then you test it. And oftentimes what we see is failure, and being okay with failure. As long as it's an iterative process, it's been very powerful, I think, among our faculty and our students, because we've allowed them to. So for many of the students, they are very task oriented. Right. It's what does it take to get to this grade? Right. And what we're trying to do is to help them understand the process. And by understanding the process, you can apply it to everything from your personal life, professional goals, career aspirations, and in any business venture. And it helps, I think, individuals think through things, and gives them, I guess, a model to follow, which is often something I think that they need. And it then, I guess, straddles that line between education and business.
I love that. I think that no matter how many times people are introduced to human-centered design or to workshops of that nature, they tend to leave that workshop with a pretty strong feeling of, this can be done and this is a good way of working and I understand it. But it's building those habits, right? It's putting that into practice that sometimes needs more loops or more design experience or projects so that people can show up in those ways and explain their data, explain the outcomes of their listening sessions, talk to people in terms of extreme users and how this is really presenting as a problem versus the way they thought they were going in to solve the problem or challenge, right? And so a recent example from our work might be that, as we're thinking about colleges of education and the unbundling of education and the notion of credentials and certificates and ongoing learning, that it's going to be so key that we micro size learning, that learning be able to both be offered as a specific skill, but also tethered to a bigger picture or ideals or design. And I think that's our challenge, right? Like equipping everybody with the skills, but also helping them understand that in the empathy stage in particular, who are you designing for? What's required to do that design well? Who's at the table? Who are you noticing or not noticing that may be in need of being a part of the design process or a part of the focus group? And so I think it's a real challenge to give people skills and at the same time equip them with sort of that liberal education lens that often gets bashed just for the word liberal, when what liberal really means is the ability to critically think and make decisions and evaluate data and weigh considerations. So how are you folks managing both? You want to equip these people with products and services acumen, but you also want to surround them with interdisciplinary perspectives and a really good sense of humanity. How do you pull off both?
So I think we're really fortunate in the fact that we have a team in this case that teaches the course. And when you're working with 8 different faculty that come from different disciplines across campus, we bring a different lens to the table. And so, for example, right now we're reworking the program, the coursework for next year, and we pulled in perspective storytelling. And what this is actually taking a story from your past. So let's say the big bad wolf, and rewriting it through the student's lens for them to be able to recognize their bias. And so that's one aspect of it. When we're talking about that liberal education and building out that skill set, that goes hand in hand with the human-centered design, which then where we carry it back into the process later when we're talking about the white savior complex and the fact that many individuals go into, whether it's a community or into industry, and they believe that they can save it because they're an academic and they know best. What we're trying to do is bring awareness to these biases that are just innate, so that we can move forward and really empathize and listen to what our community members are saying.
Awesome. So last question here on our Barriers for Breakfast vidcast with Dr. Elizabeth Hodge from East Carolina University. Why do you partner in general? I mean, academics have a reputation for going deep and they're an expert, they're studying, etc. And one of the things that's always struck me so refreshing about you is like, you're not closed to external voices or partners or people that can add to the dialogue. Why even say yes to this vidcast? Why would you ever listen to me in a small group when we're working together? How can you educate our listeners that they don't have to be the sole custodian of knowledge or thought on campus?
I think the best way I can do that is through some examples. And so the benefit of partnerships or teamwork or listening to others' ideas is what's developed from them. So if I had remained a faculty member that just solely focused on my research agenda that I came into the university with, I wouldn't be where I am right now because of it. It's the ability to engage and collaborate that has allowed me to grow both personally and professionally. So one of the things that I think is just so positive about this experience is what comes from the work that's being done. And so whether we have faculty that are working with the Latinx community at AmexCon, to students that are developing, there's a program called Edible Landscapes that they created, and it's a group of diverse students that truly we pair them together because of their different backgrounds in terms of career aspirations. So they look at the problem through different lens. and they developed out this the growing of different fruit trees on campus. And then we have a group that focused on legislation around the political campaigning. And we have another team that developed out Bloombots, which was a reading program. And so I think it's the ability to work in a team well and to listen to others' ideas, because that's where the genius comes from,
Right.
As opposed to one person and their individual views.
No, I so appreciate that, and appreciate the time today. We are hosting this premiere event on YouTube, capturing everybody's conversations today. I hope you've enjoyed the resources that we're sharing, and we'll also be dropping some links in to our respective websites as you confront some of those challenges and big problems and grand ideas to be solved, and how we're thinking about it through the lens of education and eating some of these barriers for breakfast. So I think Elizabeth, you provided us a great insight today on what you're doing at ECU, how you think about the work, and also how you're cultivating that in students. So I would love to leave you a last word, and we'll kind of close it out with this. If you're a student out there, if you're a learner out there, and you don't know where to get started, you don't know how to enroll or how to enroll in a certificate, you mentioned earlier that human-centered design can be for you as a person. What should they be doing? Should they be listening to certain things? Should they go to a certain website? Should they begin their journey by reading something that inspired you? What are your thoughts there?
So the books that our students read is through the IDEO out of Stanford.
Yep.
We also have our students read Designing Your Life. It is more of a self-help type book, but it does focus in on Odyssey planning. And I think that's a great place to start. And then also there's a field guide around human-centered design thinking that students can look into. Other than that, I would actually just encourage individuals to engage in community service. A lot of times that's where you get inspired and learn about things that maybe you never thought you'd be participating in, but actually allow you to just shine in what works best for you. So those would be my suggestions.
Those are great recommendations. IDEO has been a long time an inspiration of mine, and Tim Brown's work and others, and Burnett involved in Designing Your Life. And I think those are good resources to ground people that you actually are the architect of your own future, that you don't have to depend on someone to deposit things into you that then teach you that, and then you grow. Those things are certainly true, but you actually own and architect your design and how you want to participate or show up in that. And I think it's okay to see failure as learning, not as final or terminal. And so really appreciate those comments today, and we'll enjoy the follow-on the premiere event. And thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time. It's good seeing you again.
You too.